Hello! In 10 small chapters I guide you through the process of knitting a cuff-down sock. To follow along this tutorial you will need my sock knitting table. With this table you can knit all the sizes, children's sizes, women's sizes and men's sizes. The only thing you need to know to knit a fitting sock is the shoe size of the recipient. To be able to knit the perfect fitting sock, download my PDF file. You'll find the link in the description box below. You will need approximately 1 skein or 1 ball of sock yarn, that means 100 gram, and it has an average of 400 meter. I always use 2.5mm needles. Some people use 2.0mm needles. It depends on your gauge. Starting out with 2.5mm needles will not be a mistake. And now, let's go to the tutorial. Now I will show you how you can knit a vanilla, or in other words plain stockinette sock. In this tutorial I will show you how I knit my 2x2 ribbing cuff, a plain leg, a slip stitch heel, the foot also in stockinette, and the German toe. I call it the German toe because we call it Bandspitze, and I really don't know how you say this in English. For demonstrating, I will use slightly thicker yarn, therefore thicker needles, 3mm needles, and I will knit stitches you would cast on for a baby sock, but it won't be actually a baby sock because I use heavier weight yarn. It's only easier for you to see the stitches. So you definitely need the sock knitting table to follow the correct stitches and measurements. We will cast on 32 stitches on 4 needles because I always use DPNs and you wanted to know how I knit my socks. And I will show you a little trick right in the beginning. When I was a beginner, I never knew how much yarn do I need for my cast on. And maybe it's not so difficult for a small number of stitches, but if you come into the situation that you have to cast on 100 or 200 stitches, it can be very nerve-wracking if you don't know if you have enough yarn. And I always do it this way. I wrap the yarn around the needle. 1, 2, oh, it's 3 already, sorry, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Grab it here. And now I know I need this amount of yarn for 10 stitches. I want to cast on 32, that means 10, 20, 30, and a little bit for the 2 other stitches and to weave in at the end. And now I have this amount, and I really know I have enough yarn for the cast on. That was a little trick in the beginning I always use. That's how I do it. So we cast on 8 stitches per needle because we want to cast on 32. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You get the idea. But if you want to see how I do it with the DPNs, just keep looking, or you can skip to the next chapter. Now I have cast on 32 stitches, and I have plenty left over to even the ends at the end. Now you have to connect. It's very easy. You see they dangling down here, the 4 needles, and I only grab this one and lay it next to the other. And here's a little tip. On the one side of the needle, you see these diagonals of the cast on. You see? And if you only have diagonals, you know you have not twisted the needle. On the other side, you see pearl bumps, because that is the back side. The inside of the sock, you see the pearl bumps, they line up. So that is a way to be sure you have not twisted the needles. Oh, okay. Be sure to take the working yarn that is attached to your ball and not this thread. Okay, the first stitch, especially for a beginner with DPNs, is a little difficult, but my mom always told me I only should concentrate on the 2 needles I'm working with. So the working needle in your hand and the needle you are knitting from. Okay, now you give it a good tag. 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches. I think it's always easier to start with the knit stitches because they are easier to do in the beginning of the needle. Now they are all attached and nothing can go wrong anymore. You go on to knit over all the needles, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches. Okay, now this was one round of 2x2 ribbing. Another tip for you. When I was a beginner, I wasn't sure when the round ends or begins. So as long as you have this tail, you always know if you have reached this tail or this end of your cast on, your row is, or your round is finished. And you count the needles like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is important because when you follow my patterns, I sometimes tell you, now knit over needle 4 and 1. This and that. Okay, when you hold them like this, you see 1, 2, 3, and the last needle in the round is number 4. Again, please, that is important. That is very important when we knit with DPNs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you always knit this needle first, then this, then this, then this. You can see it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 and 1 will be in the future our heel. That is why it's so important. And 2 and 3 will be our instep stitches. But don't be confused, we are still at the cuff. And now you go on knitting the cuff in this 2x2 pattern as long as you want to. You see here, we can measure it, how long I knit the cuff here. About 5 centimeters. Sometimes I do 3.5, sometimes I do 8. So it's depending on your liking, your preferences, how long your cuff you want to have. So there is no right or wrong. So please finish the cuff and then you can come back to me. Okay, I've decided to make the cuff a little shorter because this is a very, very small sock. This would be a baby or a children's sized sock. But you see, I have stopped where I found the tail. Can I say tail? And the round, I always want to say row. The round is finished. You have finished the cuff and now you will knit the leg. The length of your leg is again depending on your preferences, but I will show you how I do it. I always measure from my tiny finger to my thumb. It's about 20 centimeters. And when I can do this, when I reach this point, I know, okay, I will start the heel. Okay, it's not I usually don't measure, but we can do it now. And it depends also on, for example, if I use a self-strapping yarn. In this example, I wanted to finish this blue stripe at a blue heel so I can go on with the gray. But usually I always do this. Okay, we will see. Yeah, 21 centimeters. So you can do this, and you know it's definitely enough, especially if you knit the slip stitch heel. I will show you because it has much room for your heel. The short row heel, not so much. That is why I converted to a slip stitch heel knitter. So now we only knit stockinette. There is nothing really I can show you. We will knit one round of stockinette. You just go on to knit stockinette. You ignore the purl bumps you come across because your cuff is finished. You only knit stockinette. And you can also add patterns. There are free patterns out there, like the blueberry waffle or the Hermione's Everyday or just a rib pattern. You can also go on knitting the 2x2 rib for the whole leg. So you have many possibilities, but in this tutorial we knit plain stockinette because that is the easiest you can do and that is very TV friendly. Okay, you see the tail is here again. We have reached the end of the round. You go on like this until you have reached your desired length. When you have reached your desired length for the leg, it's time to knit the heel. Many people are afraid of knitting heels, but I can tell you, you can trust me, it is easy. So you have finished your round where you see the tail. And now, remember how we count the needles? 1, 2, 3, 4. We will knit the stitches from needle 1 onto needle 4. When I say it like this, it sounds very confusing, but you will see it's very easy. We won't use our 5th working needle for now. We take needle 4 and just knit the stitches from needle 1 onto needle 4. Just plain stockinette. Just like this. Great. Now we have former needle 4 and 1 all on one needle, and here are the instep stitches. These two needles won't get use during knitting the heel, so we only use this needle with more stitches and our working needle. Okay, we start with knitting the heel flap. That was our first row of the heel flap, if you want to. Now you turn the work, you don't go on knitting in the round, and purl all the stitches. Okay, we have purled all the stitches, we turn the work again, and now we have knit 2 rows of the heel flap. And what I always do is, let me show you. It's easier if you see it on the other sock. That is what we knit now, but you see it like this. I have washed this sock several times. That is why you can't see a great stitch definition anymore, but it will be very easy. The length of the heel flap depends on your cast on stitches. Okay, in your sock knitting table everything is written out, but there is a guidance. You knit 2 rows less than you have stitches on this needle. Okay, so if you have cast on in the beginning of knitting the sock, if you have cast on for the cuff 60 stitches, you have 15 stitches on every needle, so that would create 30 stitches after this step here. That means 30 minus 2 equals 28. 28 rows of heel flap, and you have already knit 2. Because you have knit everything on one needle, you turned your work and purled once, that is the second row, and now you only have to knit 26 rows. Because, remember, the heel flap, I knit the heel flap 2 rows less than I have stitches on this needle. Okay? In this case, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. That means 16. 14 rows. I have already knit 2 rows. That means I still have to knit 12 rows. And now I show you how you knit the slip stitch heel. I knit the slip stitch heel because it is comfortable, sturdy and stretchy. For the slip stitch heel, you slip the stitch purlwise. Purlwise means you insert your needle from left to right. From right to left. From right to left. Slip, knit, 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 slip, and knit. Okay, that was row 3 of your heel flap. Now you turn your work again and again purl all stitches. The knit stitches and the slipped stitches. Only purling. Nothing fancy. Okay, that was row 4. Now row 5 again. You already start to see a pattern if you look closely. Again, we slip, knit, 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 slip, knit. You can see the slipped stitches. Wait, I want to show you that you can see it. The slipped stitches are a little bit bigger than the knit stitches. So if you have forgotten where you stopped, maybe you stopped in the middle of the row because your phone rang, and you put up your knitting again, then you can count from the first, because the first is always a slip, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, and you can identify the stitch. Or you just have a look and you can see this is a slip stitch. This is very prominent, that is very big. And here you see the tiny knit stitch. It's hidden between the two slip stitches. Okay? So that will make everything easier. You go on in that matter for the rows you need for your size. And we will see us when you have finished this for the heel turn. And it will be very easy, trust me. As you can see, I have finished the heel flap because it is a teeny tiny sock. It looks different than your sock you have on the needles. I just want to recap what we did. We knit the stitches from needle 1 onto needle 4. That was our first row of the heel flap. Then we turned the work, purled the stitches, second row. And then in the third row, we started to knit the slipped stitch pattern. And I think now you can see very clearly which the knit stitches and which the slipped stitches are. It's nearly a tongue twister for me as a German. And now we knit the heel turn. You need your sock knitting table, or you choose on your own how you want to divide these stitches by 3. Before we do that, I want to show you an example, another example with a not washed sock yet, a not worn sock, that you can see what we do now. Your sock looks like this, way more stitches and more rows. And what we do now is we knit this. Okay? We decrease stitches in stockinette and turn the heel so that we change the direction of our knitting. We did this now. Now we turn the heel. We go like this in stockinette. And what we do after that, I will show you. But I wanted to show you on a adult size sock and with colors, which makes it easier to see. Okay. You divide your stitches you have on the needles by 3. And if this number is not a multiple of 3, the additional stitches you put in the middle. That is as easy as you can do it. Or you have a look on your sock knitting table you received from me. In this case, we have 16 stitches. That's why I divide it like this: 5, 6, 5. Okay, and that means we knit the first third of the stitches in normal stockinette, no slipping now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first third. Now we come to the second third, in this case 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the last stitch of the middle stitches we knit together with the following stitch of the last third. That makes 6, and we have 4 stitches left because we have decreased the stitch now. Now you turn the work. You don't finish the row. You turn the work slip the first stitch purlwise because you are on the purl side. That is one of the 6 stitches in the middle. That means that counts as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we want to have 6 in the middle. Decrease one of these, so the 6th stitch you purl together with one of the following. Now you have 6 middle stitches and 4 side stitches, just as here. And what you see now, you turn your work again, don't finish the row, turn the work, and what you see now, you have gaps. You easily see where you have decreased, so now you don't have to count anymore. The 6 stitches in the middle will always stay, and we knit 2 together or purl 2 together on both sides until we have decreased all these stitches you see here. Okay, it makes more sense when I show you. Okay, we slip this stitch again because that is the purl 2 together stitch. It is already knit, so slip. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 you knit together with the following. 6. And as always, turn the work. Slip the first stitch. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 you knit together with the next, purl together, sorry. Turn your work. Yarn back again. Slip the first stitch, it counts as 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Turn work, slip the first stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, and purl the 6th together with the next. You see, I'm getting faster now because I guess you have understood how it works. You get the idea. You can also slip the stitch before you turn the work like this. That's the way I do it mostly. But when I was a beginner, I didn't do that. Turn your work, slip the stitch. We are close to be done with the heel turn. Here you decrease the last time on this side. Turn your work, slip the stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we are done now with the heel turn. Ta-da! It was easy, wasn't it? It was so easy. The heel turn is done. You have a teeny tiny heel. And I will show you what we do next. Next up, I will get the green sock again. Ignore that this sock is knit in a pattern. The technique is the same. We knit the gusset now. Okay. We are here, and as you see, we need to knit this diagonal, so to say. We have knit here and we are here, and now we want to increase the stitches again so we can knit the whole foot. And therefore we did the slip stitches on the side, because it's so much easier to see where we have to pick up the stitches now. So what we do now is, I lay it next to here, we have to pick up stitches on both sides here so that we fill this gap. That was what I was trying to say with a triangle. We have to fill up this triangle. That is the gusset. This part here. That is the gusset. You see this? Okay, and it's very easy. You take the needle with the stitches on and pick up the stitches like this. You see the slipped stitches very, very well. You see, for example, this is a slipped stitch. This one. This one. And that's where you pick up the stitches now. Okay. Here is the first stitch. Oh, wait. Before we do that, you have to knit across the heel. Sorry, sorry for that. Okay, now we have the yarn where we need it. And you take the same needle and pick up the first stitch here. You see that creates a big hole, a gap. I don't like that, so that's why I insert the needle on another spot where I don't open the stitch so much, like this. You can now pick up the slipped stitches. You can count, but I always pick up as many stitches as I need, and as I pick more stitches often because I want to avoid holes, okay? So I won't count now. I will just pick up as many as I need, because that's not rocket science. You can do whatever you want, really. You can't ruin it. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to pick up. Okay. Here is, I think that was the last, but if I started to knit here again, I would have a big hole here. You see this big gap. So that's why I always pick up a little more stitches, 1 or 2, to avoid the gaps. 1 is enough here. Okay, now you need another needle again. We will have 5 needles very soon. Now you knit plain stockinette or your pattern of your liking, the instep stitches. We haven't touched them for a long time, and now they are back into play. So needle 2 and 3. This is needle 3. Okay. You need an empty needle now. And again, we pick up stitches. Here you see a huge gap. The first slipped stitch is here, but I always start where I want to avoid holes. For example, here. Is that good? No. I always test. You see, now that's holy, so I will pick up here. And we will make the holes smaller in the next round with a trick. Some patterns tell you pick up exactly so and so many stitches, but I'm not like that. I look at my knitting and the fabric tells me what I have to do. Okay, great. And now you knit half of, not half of all the stitches. You knit half of the heel stitches onto this needle. We had 6 original stitches here before we picked up. So you knit half of the 6, that makes 3 onto this needle. That is the way you have the needles, the stitches distributed in the right way. So you have needle 1, 2, 3 and 4 again. The next round is a trick, because picked up stitches don't sit correctly on your needle. You know, with sitting I mean like this. That is a knit stitch, and if you have them in the wrong side, they sit like this. You have 3 original stitches on this needle left from your heel knitting. Okay, you knit them normal, and the picked up stitches you knit through the back loop. That makes the holes smaller and the stitches sit correctly on the needle, because now the stitches sit like this, but they have to sit like this. Okay? Okay. Through the back loop. It's not difficult. Instead of inserting the needle like this, you insert from right to left. Okay, that was the first needle. Now we knit the instep stitches, just normal. Okay, here we have the picked up stitches first, and the last 3 stitches are from our original stitches from the heel. So picked up stitches, knit through the back loop. Right. Instead of like doing this, you do this. And the last 3 you knit normally. Okay, great. Look what we have done so far. Awesome. Everything is lined up and on where it should be. And now we need to decrease again. We want to have 8 stitches on all needles. Okay, that means we have to decrease, let me count, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Okay, here we have 11 stitches and we have to decrease until we have 8 stitches. And do we have 11 here as well? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. No, 10. Some people take it very crucial and only pick up the same amount of stitches on both sides. But as I told you, I'm not so strict like that. I do what the fabric tells me, and if the fabric tells me, oh, it's quite loose here, we need another stitch because otherwise we create a hole, I will pick up another stitch. And if the other side does not afford it, I don't do it. What is important is that you have 8 stitches, or your amount of stitches regarding which size you knit after you have knit the decreasing rows. Okay, the decreasing rows or rounds, we are knitting in rounds again, the decreasing rounds are very easy. You only decrease on needle 1 and 4, because here you have more stitches. We knit up to the last 3 stitches on needle 1. Okay, 3 stitches are left. And that's always what we do, no matter which size of socks you knit. And now you knit 2 together. And knit the last stitch. You knit the instep stitches without decreasing anything, because they are good as they are. The second needle of the instep stitches and the third needle in total. And on the fourth needle we do it the other way around. We knit the first stitch and then decrease the second and the third. And we do slip, slip and knit 2 together. Ta-da! Decreased 1 stitch and you knit the last stitches. Now you knit 1 plain round of stockinette again, then you do a decreasing round, then another round of stockinette. You always change it. Decreasing round, stockinette round, decreasing round, stockinette round. And you do this until you have 8 stitches on both needles. Okay? Great. We will see each other when you have finished this and you come back to me to knit the foot. I will show you on this sock what we are going to do next, because I did a contrast heel and toe, and that makes it very easy to see what you have to do now. Here's our tiny, tiny, tiny sock in a weird shape, because thick yarn, thick needles, not the right amount of stitches. It's only for demonstration purposes. I did all the decreasing rounds. We have 8 stitches everywhere, and now I would have to look on my sock knitting table to see how many centimeters do I have to knit until I have to start the toe. And my table always tells you the length, including the heel of the foot, until you start the decreasing for the toes. That means if the table tells you you have to knit 20 centimeters or 21 centimeters, then you always, let me do it this way, it's easier for me because I'm right-handed, measure from the heel, from this part of the heel. Here you see it's about 20 centimeters. That is for my shoe size, it's the measurement. And here I know I start the toe. I always look what my yarn tells me, because here I didn't use a contrasting color, so it doesn't matter. But here I wanted to finish my gray yarn and before, so the stripe is the same as the other ones. So if you have the same situation, you can already start with this main color, your decreases, and then go on with the colors of your contrasting toe. But here it's pretty much perfect, 20 centimeters, and then I started the toe. So it's only knitting plain stockinette what you have to do. And every now and then you can measure how many rounds you still have to knit until you start the decreasing rounds for the toe. Some people count the rounds, but I don't recommend this because every yarn behaves differently. This yarn is Peyton's Croy and it's very thick and bouncy. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 rows or rounds for 1 centimeter. But I guess with West Yorkshire spinners you might have 6 rounds or rows for 1 centimeter because it's so much thinner. So I always recommend measuring, and definitely you can do this with inches as well. yeah, so a measuring tape is always in my knitting pouch, always when I knit socks. Okay, so knit your amount of centimeters, inches, and come back to me so we can knit the toe together. Now we are ready to knit the toe. And let me tell you, you have to have a look at your sock knitting table, because the knitting tables tells you how many rounds you have to knit without decreasing and how many decreasing rounds you have to knit. For example, for a special shoe size, it says make a decreasing round, then in the third round decrease again, make this 2 times, and then in every second round you have to decrease, or then in every round, and that tells you the table. I will show you now how we decrease the stitches. And therefore it's important again to see how we count our DPNs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the decreasing happens here and here. That means at the end of needle 1, at the beginning of needle 2, at the end of needle 3, and at the beginning of needle 4. Yeah? That is important because we do another type of decrease here than here. Okay. We knit up to the last 3 stitches. And we do knit 2 together. And we have decreased 1. On needle 2, we knit the first stitch and make a slip, slip, knit. And we finish this needle and knit all the stitches. Now we are at needle 3 and we have to decrease here at the end. We knit up to the last 3 stitches and do knit 2 together again and knit the last stitch. And on needle 4 we knit 1 stitch and we do slip, slip, knit, and knit the last stitches. Let's do a recap. What did we do? Knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit. Okay? You only have to remember what you do first. Knit 2 together. And then it's always changing. Slip, slip, knit, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit. Very easy. Now you have to knit plain rounds. Please look at your table how many plain rounds you need. In most adult sizes it's 3 plain knitting rounds, and then you do the next decreasing round, just as we did here. It really depends if you knit children's size sock or a men's sized sock, a small men sized or a big women's sized sock. So that is what the table tells you, okay? And yeah, that is pretty much everything you need to know to knit the decreasing rounds until you have reached the last 8 stitches of the toe. Yeah, 8, 2 on every needle. And what you do then, I will show you. But first, finish your decreasing rounds. Now we are ready to finish up our sock. And this is very easy. You have 2 stitches on every needle left, so all in all 8 stitches. Now you cut the yarn. You need a little left over so you can weave in the ends. Now you need a darning needle and you need a very pointy needle, not a tapestry needle with a blunt end. You need a very pointy, sharp needle. Okay. What I do now, I take my sock like this and put the stitches onto the darning needle. Pull the yarn through, not too tight. Again, pull the needle through and the yarn as well. A third time. And the last time. Now you pull tight. And it will be easier for your sock, because your sock is bigger. But I always do the following. I go into the sock with my left hand, because I'm right-handed. You see this round shape. And I will insert the needle in the middle of the circle. Grab it from the inside. And turn the sock. I have still the needle in my hand and pull very, very, very tight. And now we weave in the ends. I always weave in my ends. I go through the stitches, so I split the stitch. So I really split the stitches. I go through the different strands. Pull it through. Go next to it in the other direction. And then in the same direction as in the beginning, through the same stitches we have already worked. And now this is secure. It never came undone. And I wash my socks in the washing machine. Now we can flip it over again. And you see, pretty. And now we weave in this cast on end. Weaving in the cuff, there is a thing I suggest. You see, it's not even, because you don't knit in rounds or in a plain circle. You knit in a spiral when you knit in the round. It doesn't matter if you use DPNs or another magic loop or whatever. It's always the same. That means I fill it up a bit. I go under this stitch, secure it, and then let me see how we do this now. Yeah, and then here again. Okay, now it looks tidier. You don't have to do that. That's just a thing I do. And then I go into the column of knit stitches. I hope it makes sense to you. I go into the inside of the sock. Here's the yarn. And then I go downwards into the legs of the V of the knit stitch. And the right legs of the V. That's enough. It's very secure. And you can cut the yarn. And your sock is finished. Don't forget, this is a very tiny wonky sock. When you take the correct yarn, the correct needles and your measurements and stitches, you will have a sock that looks like this. Or, for example, like this. Now you only have to do the same thing a second time, and you have a finished pair of hand-knit socks. And they will fit you, I promise.